Here we go. Hey everybody, it's Kristine from the Easton Public Library, and I want to thank you all for popping in and joining us on today's episode of Easton Community Book Chat. And so it's a beautiful July day outside, and I'm really happy to have with us our guest today, Katharine Harris. Hi, Katharine, how are you?
Hi, Kristine, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good, thank you, very good. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for coming to join me and talk about books. So Katharine, you work as a nonprofit consultant, and are you sort of kind of new to Easton? How many years would you say you've been here?
Yes, it will be actually 3 years this month. We arrived in Easton August 2019, so right before school started. So
yeah. So what brought you to Easton?
Well, we had moved back to the East Coast from California, and we were actually living in Norwalk, and I was working in Newtown, and I was driving through Easton a couple of times a week. And I grew up in a very small country farming town in Australia, and I just fell in love with that whole farming. Like it was almost like coming home, although the scenery is very different. So there was that aspect to it. So I just love the rural town. So
yeah, it's unusual in especially Fairfield County, Connecticut, to have a town like Easton. Somebody had told me it's like a little tiny piece of Vermont in the middle of Fairfield County.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is unusual.
It's very peaceful, and where we live, our house backs onto the Aspetuck, which is beautiful. So we get the like the benefits of that without having to pay for it, really.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So we're going to talk today about this very cool book that you are going to recommend, and it's called The Perfect Horse: The Daring U.S. Mission to Rescue the Priceless Stallions Kidnapped by the Nazis. So very, very interesting. Oops, somebody's joining us, but I think they're not staying. Can you tell me a little bit about this book and why you chose to discuss?
Yeah, so I love horses. So when I saw the title of the book, I just was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I picked it up, and I had no idea when I first saw the title what it would be. I looked at it and I thought, oh, this would be interesting. And I do love the Lipinzana stallions. And I was intrigued by how, the story could really be about the horses in the setting that it was in. And that was what initially intrigued me. So that's why I picked it up. And of course, the author, Elizabeth Letts, I mean, she, does an incredible job talking about all of the aspects of the story, because you have a lot. It's not a feel-good story. Kristine, I don't know if you've read the whole book, but it's not really a feel-good story. But it is a story of men who are in war and how they come together, like from different countries and fighting each other, yet they come together to rescue these horses, and it's just an incredible story. And it does talk a lot about the stallions and the training, and the love that the trainers have for their horses, and it was just very very special to me because I'm a horse lover. So
yeah, well, I mean, I do think that's a great initial reason maybe to pick it up, as the horses are such a great topic, but then to that it gets tied into sort of this time of history and these specific characters. It's really like a great story, very unique story, right?
Right. And then it does get a little interesting because, the Germans wanted to create the perfect horse. So what they were going to do was to, kind of like almost interbreed, like, sons breeding with their mothers. It was a little bit strange in that respect, but that was what they thought would actually create the perfect horse. And of course, a lot of people, outside of the, were generally working with the horses were against that, because they know that that's not actually healthy and it's not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But that was the mindset of the Germans at the time, was to do whatever they had to do to create this perfect horse. So
Oh, that's such an interesting tie-in, right, to the whole history of the Nazis and what they were, I guess looking to do. So yeah, you said it's not like a feel-good story, and besides the horse aspect and the cool history, like what else did you like about the book? Was there anything specific that really stuck with you?
Well, I think it was more like how it was written. It was really written from the perspective. A lot of it was the perspective of the horses. Like,
Oh, cool.
did capture, the fear that, like when they were riding through and there was an air raid, the horses would sense it and hear it before the humans did, right? So if you were riding the horse and you felt them tense up, you knew it was coming, even though you couldn't hear it as a human. And it was really well done. And I don't know how much time she spent researching the material to actually create that emotional connection from the horse to the reader. So I think she did an incredible job.
Oh, that is so interesting.
Yeah. And for someone who, I grew up with a horse, and, I understand when the horse, so my horse was, she wasn't the most perfectly behaved horse. She had a lot of energy and a lot of sass. And, sometimes, something would happen and I could tell instantly that she was going to do something, like she was going to bolt, or she would try to, or she was going to jump sideways or jump upwards, like she was all over the place. So, I could really sense what she was trying to communicate. And Elizabeth Letts actually was, she was an equestrian as well. So she understood that. So, and I think because she understood it, she could communicate it in a way that the reader could feel the reaction from the horse. So it was beautifully done.
Oh, wow. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
What do you like to read generally? Do you like nonfiction or do you have a preference?
I have a preference. I mean, a book really has to grab me first off. If it doesn't, like, I can't remember. There was one book I tried to read that was recommended to me. It was anyway, I can't remember now. And someone recommended it to me and they said it's an excellent book, especially for kids. And I homeschool my son, and I tried to get into this series. I think it was four books in the series, and I could not. I tried several times to get into it and I just couldn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
There was another book that was written by the same author, but it was a standalone book and I loved it. I got into it straight away, but the series I couldn't quite get into. So yeah, so it has to get me fairly quickly for me to keep reading.
Yeah.
And I'm currently reading another series, The Ranger's Apprentice, which we in the library, and I'm loving that. I think I'm in book 8 right now, so that's really good.
Yeah.
So I'm loving the author, and the author is Australian, and he has an incredible gift to bring something to life. It's a very different kind of story to The Perfect Horse, but there are horses in this story too. But he does an incredible job writing and really grabbing your attention. Like, I always want to, one more chapter. This will be my life. One more chapter. Like, I just can't put the books down. So it's great.
I think that, that would have to be, I'm going to say, the sign of a good book, right? Where you just are dying to have a minute to grab it and pick it up. And then when you kind of know you need to go do something else, you're like, no, I can't stop. I just have to read one more chapter. That, I think, has got to be a sign of a good book.
It's even funny. While I was having lunch today, I read a couple of chapters, and I'm like, I really should just get ready because I know I've got my call with Kristine at 3, but I'm like, I want to read another chapter. It was funny.
Yeah, that's good. I love that story. So, Katharine, do you write at all?
Well, yes, I'm actually writing a children's book. It's a young adult novel, and it actually could be a series. I haven't yet decided whether it's going to be a series or an extra long book with 3 or 4 parts to it. So, and you've probably guessed it is about horses. So it's really a story about how God uses dreams to direct your life. And it's about this boy who's riding his horse, and they're actually camping out overnight on their property, and he has this dream, and he wakes up like, oh my gosh, it felt so real. And then the story unfolds of how this dream comes to life. So it's a kind of a cool story. So
I love that. It sounds really fun.
Yeah. And it's fun to write too. It's, but like I'm reading like Elizabeth Letts and John Flanagan, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't write anywhere near as well as them. How am I going to make mine sound as good?
Well, you might be your own hardest critic, right? Yeah.
True,
So
true. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it sounds really fun and interesting. And then you said that there was a young readers edition of The Perfect Horse too that you have.
Yeah, so this is, and it's about 100 or so pages less than the other one, and it's also written by Elizabeth Letts. So, and I read that actually a couple of weeks ago again, and it really is the same story. There's obviously, there's a lot of really deep aspects to the adult version, so maybe they were taken out. I don't know exactly which pieces were taken out, but the story was just as captivating and just as informative as the fuller version. So yeah.
I like when they do that, when there's something that's really a story that younger readers could really get a lot out of, but for whatever reason, perhaps it's the certain content or the language it's written in or whatever, it's just not really suitable for them. And then they are able to go back and edit it and turn it into a young readers edition. I love when they do that.
And what's great about this is after I finished reading the other one, and I realized that there was a kids version, I bought it for my son because he loves anything war related, and he loves horses too. So he read it and he loved it as well. And I also recommended it to a friend of mine in California, and she's from Poland originally, and she read it with her daughter. So, and they also love horses. So that was really cool, like on the other side of the country that they were reading the same book. So
yeah. And I would think a lot of people in Easton, we do have a lot of people who ride horses in town. So be like a great little piece to grab you. Like you said, you picked it up because you loved horses. Be a nice little way to get people interested in that book.
And there is that, I think you mentioned earlier that there's so much history, and it's seeing the history from a different perspective. Like we read books about the wars and the devastation and everything that goes on, but we don't always look at how it impacts something like a horse or or some other being. And I think this, is really great because it combines and it really communicates not just the history, but the experience of the horse. And what's really cool is that they actually rescued the Lipinzanas and sent them to the US. And because the Germans wanted to capture them for themselves, they were literally stealing them and keeping them for themselves. So they essentially stole them from the Germans and then sent them over to the US. And in fact, my husband, he grew up in the Bronx, and his school went to see them at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
He said he didn't really understand what the big deal was until he actually saw them, and he said it was absolutely spectacular and quite amazing to witness. And
so that must have been a fun experience as a kid to go and see that.
Yeah. He said it was quite. He still remembers it quite vividly. So yeah, it's just great.
That's cool.
I wish I was there to see them.
Yeah, I know, that would have been so fun. Well, Katharine, I really appreciate you coming to chat with us. And The Perfect Horse is available here at the Easton Library. You can hit the search the catalog button to click it. And we don't own the youth version, but I'm sure we could absolutely request that from another library if anybody's interested in that one. I didn't even know it existed. So fun. And then we had an earlier little pop-in from my coworker Penelope. We were trying to figure out another one of the laptops, and so she popped in, I think accidentally, but so we waved hi to Penelope and then she left. But thank you so much, Katharine, for joining me, and I really look forward to you and your family coming into the library again soon. And thanks for watching this episode of Easton Library Book Chat. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kristine. It was a pleasure.
Oh, great. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.